This episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast is brought to you by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. TherapyNotes has everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. It's what I use in my practice. And now they have a patient portal that provides telehealth. It's a HIPAA-secure telehealth portal all in one place that's easy for you and easy for your clients to access. So be sure and check them out today, TherapyNotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just Gordon, you can get 2 months of their services for free. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 143 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you joined me for the podcast. Boy, I can't believe we're getting ready to just move right into September here. It seems like the summer has just been a blur. Not so much time going by quickly, but just the weirdness of this summer in particular. But anyway, I hope you're having a good one and things are transitioning for you, as I know that a lot of folks have kids starting back to school and figuring out all that and virtual learning and that sort of thing. And it's still a really different time in our lives, just with all that's going on. And I'm really looking forward to you getting to hear from my guest today, Ashley Comegys. And Ashley is going to be, and I talk about just about going to 100% telehealth practice, particularly for moms, and thinking about it in that context. And Ashley has started a Facebook group that is really growing just around this particular topic. Really, just thinking about work, parents that are at home with their kids, but also still trying to work and hold down practices. And so it's a great conversation. And I think you're going to learn a lot from Ashley in this particular episode. One of the things about this time of year, is that normally it's a time of year when a lot of conferences start up and we start having a lot of conferences, but this year, obviously, there's not a lot of those going on except for virtually. And last year, one of the things that was just such a wonderful experience that occurred in October of last year was Killing It Camp. And I went out to Estes Park, Colorado with my friend Joe Sanok and about 200 other therapists, and just had a wonderful time out there. And Joe has really committed to trying to do this every year, but needless to say, because of COVID, we're not going to meet in person. But not to lose out, we're still going to be meeting, but virtually. So Killing It Camp has gone online this year. And if you'll look at the show notes and the show summary here, you can see a link to Killing It Camp. And if you'll just go to killingitcamp.com, you can get into that. I'm going to be one of the speakers again for Killing It Camp. And it's going to be a different year. And it's going to be done virtually. But I think if you'll go over there and look at that, you're going to see a lot of great topics. And it's really Killing It Camp, I think, is becoming kind of the ultimate conference for private practice owners, particularly of those that are kind of in the starting phases or in those stages of really trying to grow and build their practice. So I invite you to go over and take a look at that. And the dates for Killing It Camp this year are October 5th through 7th. And the format's going to be, as with it being online, you get to just kind of pick and choose which breakout sessions you want to join. And also because it's online, the cost of it is greatly reduced, and it, much lower expense, and being able to participate in something like this. Granted, it's not going to be as good as being in person with people, but we're going to muddle through this and make it a good conference anyway. So I invite you to go over and check that out, and love to see you there. Love you to have you join us and be part of this event. Another upcoming online event that's going to be occurring probably towards the end of September. I haven't gotten the exact dates yet, but Brighter Vision has their annual Fall into Cash promo or event, and it's usually a series of webinars and podcast episodes that you just learn from other experts in private practice on various topics. So I'm going to be participating in that. We're still determining the topic that I'll be speaking on or doing either a webinar or a podcast interview for. But anyway, check out Brighter Vision. If you'll go over to brightervision.com/Gordon, that'll get you into to see what they have to offer. Brighter Vision is really the leading website producer for therapists. They are the experts really when it comes to helping you build and design a website that represents who you are. And they'll work with you individually to help you get the kind of website that you want. And if you'll use that link, brightervision.com/Gordon, you'll see a promo code there. I think it changes from time to time, but the promo code will allow you to get 1 month of their services for free, and you can try them out with no obligation. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that and to keep on your radar the Fall into Cash promo. They're going to have just lots of giveaways and great stuff for that particular event. Another one that is coming up, another event, and again, I'm kind of making the rounds here with a lot of my private practice building friends and experts. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux over at the Private Practice Startup are doing a podcast mini-series called Up Close and Personal. And I am one of the people that they nominated to see who they will interview. And so if you'll look in the show notes here, there'll be a link that'll get you to the ballot or the place where you can learn more about that and then vote for me or any of the other private practice building people that you want to hear more about and learn more about their stories. I'd be honored if you vote for me, but there are a lot of other great people on that list as well. And so I'm going to go over and vote for some of those folks as well. So anyway, I invite you to take a look at that. And the deadline for that is September the 7th. So as this podcast is coming out, this episode's coming out, just a few more days for that. So anyway, I think that's all the kind of announcements that I have and things I wanted to let you know about. And so I'm looking forward to you hearing from Ashley Comegys and our conversation just about those folks that are moms and running virtual, particularly solely online private practice. And so and let you hear from Ashley and what she's learned about that in her own practice. So without further ado, here's Ashley Comegys. One of the key indicators of a successful private practice is making sure that the practice owner understands their finances and that they have a good handle on how things are working within the financial side. And if you're feeling a bit intimidated by all of that, be sure to talk to my friends over at Green Oak Accounting at greenoakaccounting.com. If Julie and her team will do a free consultation with you to find out what your needs are and help you get started in understanding that whole side of things. Profitability isn't always about growth, but it's more about understanding how the numbers are working behind the scenes. So be sure and check them out today, greenoakaccounting.com. And also be sure to keep an ear out for Julie's new podcast, Therapy for Your Money, which is starting in late September. And so there'll be links here to that show in the show notes. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so happy to have with me today Ashley Comegys, who is in New Orleans. So that is, and we were chatting here before we started. They've skirted the big hurricane that came through here recently. But anyway, Ashley, so glad you're with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, and I'm so excited about this topic that we're going to kind of delve into because I think it's so timely. And I know just in my own practice, I've got several moms that work in my practice and just balancing all that we're balancing. So as I start with everyone, why don't you tell folks just a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've kind of landed where you've landed?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I definitely did not get into social work initially with the idea of private practice. I got my master's from Tulane University and lived and worked in New Orleans for 6 years in a variety of different capacities of crisis counseling, emergency response, trauma recovery. And then I met my husband who's in the Coast Guard, and that took us relocating to Maui, Hawaii. And yeah.
Poor people. I'm just so, yeah.
And it was really at that time that I kind of had the ability to kind of reinvent my career if I wanted to, not necessarily by choice, but I just couldn't find couldn't find work there. It's not a big location, not a big area, and was kind of in a place to say, you know what, maybe it's time to start to check out private practice. And in doing that there, worked with a few other clinicians to help build a group practice there on Maui that is still continued up and running, multidisciplinary practice, thriving there in that community. But during that time, I also continued to learn more about online therapy, telehealth. I was still licensed back in Louisiana and began working with clients that were located back there, and really just kind of dove into this at what felt like at the time kind of this new thing, but really had been around for a while.
Right.
And so fast forward a couple years, we end up moving back to New Orleans. I have a baby, and it's kind of that chicken or the egg. Do you decide to find childcare or find a job? And was just kind of really wrestling with the fact that every 3 years we move with the Coast Guard, and you know, it doesn't make sense financially or effort wise to start up and shut down a brick and mortar private practice. And I really loved the freedom and flexibility that I had in working for myself and in private practice. And it was just kind of at this place of what do I do? And a light bulb kind of went off of, you know, I was licensed still in Hawaii, was doing a little bit of contract work with the group practice that I was, you know, associated with back there. And I thought, well, we're going to have to uproot every, 3 to 4 years. Why not start an online practice myself that regardless of where we are, regardless of, what's kind of going on in life, I don't have to shut down my business to relocate, and I can continue to carry it through, and it'll be, financially stable, sustainable, because I'm not dependent on, having an actual office and all the startup of that. So I've been completely online, working for myself, since the beginning of 2019. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm now licensed in, Hawaii, Louisiana, and Colorado, and work with clients in all 3 of those states.
Wow. Yeah. And it's, as we were speaking about at the beginning I mean, before we started recording, you know, it's pretty obvious since COVID hit that online therapy is something that's going to stay around, and we're going to, I think a lot of people are rethinking how they do their practices, but you'd already done that part before any of this hit with COVID. And so, yeah, and I know one of the things too is that Ashley, you have a Facebook group, and it's just titled Moms Building Online Therapy Practices. And so, yeah, so talk a little bit about that and just kind of your thought process around why particularly, you know, I think there's there's a lot of bleed over for dads too. I think it's another thing to think about. So,
yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and I think you're right that a lot of people, I think before COVID, either didn't have any interest in doing telehealth or were kind of skeptical of it. And then, you know, this pandemic forced everybody to get online and to figure out how to do this quickly. And I think a lot of people have been surprised at how much they like it and are reconsidering, do I want to go back to an office when it's safe, or, you know, do I at least want to keep this as part of my practice of doing it in person with people if it's safe, but also having an online presence. And I think it is important to have the option of both, even if you do decide to go back in person. But yeah, you know, the reality is that this is for anybody. You know, you can be a dad, you don't have to be a parent at all. But I've chosen to focus on, you know, supporting other moms with building an online practice because, you know, the reality is a lot of times childcare does fall to moms, and it really does then impact our career. And that was kind of where I was when I kind of had that aha moment of, you know, my career is really important to me. I'm not ready to just stay at home. I still want to have this. And so, yeah, you know, with COVID right now, there's the virtual learning going on. There's, or childcare centers are closed. We're very fortunate. My son is able to go to his preschool. He just started a couple weeks ago again. Right. And, you know, we feel safe sending him. But also the reality is it can shut down at any time. And the struggle of, you know, how do I manage a new schedule and adapt with all of this, that working with clients online really does give you flexibility and freedom that maybe a brick and mortar office doesn't necessarily provide. You know, for example, if you share an office space with somebody else, or, you know, maybe you aren't over the whole office building, you may be limited the hours that you can go in there.
Right.
But with working with clients online, you know, I've been fortunate where maybe something's going on and my husband isn't able to be home that day. And I have to flex clients either to a different day, and I can do it on a weekend, or I can do it after bedtime, at a time that I know I have childcare, and I'm not having to, you know, say, well, now I have to travel a half hour to an office, a half hour back, and, you know, all of the extra time that adds up to that. So with, you know, we're not sure where we are in this pandemic right now and, you know, what the outcome is going to be, but it's going to be a lot of continuing to kind of pivot, adjust expectations. And so having an online practice, I believe for moms really can help with that, having that flexibility to be the mom and to be a clinician and still have your career.
Right. You know, one question that I bet a lot of people might have, and you know, I've kind of experienced this a little bit here recently. I've shared on the podcast, my wife had a major surgery, and I've had to kind of readjust my schedule to be able to take care of her and make sure we get everything done for her. What have you found with your clients and their willingness to be flexible around things? Yeah.
You know, I've been very fortunate that my clients, especially during this time, have been willing to be very flexible with all of this. And I think for a couple reasons. I think I do see a lot of moms and they get it because they're also having to be flexible in their own life. And they've asked, can we adjust my schedule? Because now my kids are home. I can't see you at this time now because I have to be in a virtual learning class with my child. What can we work? And so even those who aren't moms, I think a lot of people right now, at least personally, what I've been experiencing, people get it. Like nothing's really normal right now. One day we're at work, the next day everything's shut down, or, some days we're, able to work from home, or we have to go into the office, the following day. So I've been very fortunate that my clients have been very understanding. But one of the things, we've been talking about this in the Facebook group recently is, how do you adjust your schedule when stuff comes up? How do you prepare clients for some of that? And, especially I think with, as we're in this kind of time of virtual learning, and kids are starting to go back to school, schools are sending kids home for things like just a simple runny nose because, they're concerned about that. And that normally wouldn't force you to say, I can't see clients today. But now it is. And so we've been talking about, okay, how do you kind of have some of those upfront conversations with clients to just say, hey, I'm just kind of giving you a heads up, kids are back in school. We may have to adjust things a little bit more, and kind of prepare them for that. And then being willing and ready to say, here are some options of where we could, shift appointments to. So that way you already kind of have an idea of, this is what my flexible availability would be.
Right. Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. I think by giving clients a heads up ahead of time, they understand. I mean, because they've for the most part, our clients are going through, difficult, some of them going through difficult times too. And so they understand and can relate to that. And so, it's communication on the front end. I think it's just huge with that. Another thing that you've done, Ashley, that I think is just real intriguing is getting licensed in several states. And so what's that process been like for you, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so some of that kind of happened organically because of our moves. I had already gotten my LCSW in Louisiana when we moved to Hawaii, and knew in order to work there, I was going to need to have a license there. And, as a military spouse, it's hard because each state is so different, even though there's been a lot of efforts to try to help make things easier for military families. But in regards to Hawaii, the only thing that was really quote unquote beneficial was they kind of put my application towards the front of the line to say, we'll try to get your application through quicker. And so it wasn't, compared to some applications, that one wasn't too bad. And I've just continued to maintain that. The majority of my clients actually are still in Hawaii, even though I'm in Louisiana.
Wow.
Which is, we could always end up getting stationed back in Hawaii, which is partly why I've maintained that license. But it's a large source of income for me in working there. Sure. And Colorado kind of happened, interestingly. There's not a Coast Guard station in Colorado.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So we won't end up there, but I work with military families as well, and I had several clients who were going to be moving to Colorado, and being credentialed with TRICARE, it doesn't have to be state specific. It's more region specific. And, I just was like, let me just take a look. What would it be like to get licensed in Colorado? And it was actually a very, very simple process.
Wow.
Compared to a lot of other states, and, not high license fees and stuff. And so I decided, that's also an area where there is a lot of military families, and, let's go ahead and just add that license. So that's why I've decided to carry that one. I'm not of the mindset of just get licensed everywhere, because I think then you start to, you market yourself to everyone and you're kind of speaking to no one then.
Right.
So it really, for me, has been, strategic of, okay, where where are our clients located? Where are we going to be located? And figuring out cost benefit analysis. Is it a really high license fee to add there? And how many clients am I going to get in that area?
Right.
And what's, the ease of continuing that license forward.
Right. Yeah. I think you've got to, you're exactly right. I think if you try to cater to everyone, you end up catering to none. And so, I think that's, it sounds like an amazing niche that you've created. Yeah. And so, that's a good segue into, I'm sure people would be curious as to how you've marketed your practice and how you've gone about getting new clients and referrals and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I would definitely recommend and has been really beneficial for me has been to get a good website. And I ended up building it myself on Squarespace, but I have had support to help get it optimized. And so that has become a big source of referrals for me because I have it marketed towards each state specific, but I use language in the SEO and on my pages to help target specific areas. So kind of like what I was saying a minute ago, I think sometimes there's a temptation when we're moving into telehealth again. It's like, well, I'm licensed for the whole state. I can do everybody. But again, you start talking to no one. And so, just like you would with a brick and mortar office, first start in your area, first start where you're physically located. And so I've been very purposeful, when I'm writing, blog posts or when I'm doing copy on my pages to still target certain localities in the area where my virtual address is, that's pulling people up. So that way, it's just getting me ranking higher in those areas for people to find me. I also, am a big advocate of directories. Again, cost benefit analysis. What is it bringing in for you? But it's a great way for people to find you just by doing a basic search. And then, I think there's a myth too with online work of, well, how am I going to network? How am I going to do this if I'm, all online? And it's a lot of times the marketing strategies are the same way as in person, right? Like you can still have a coffee date or, a lunch meeting with somebody in your area, that is a natural collaborator with you. I work with, like I said, a lot of moms, women who are postpartum. So for me, whether it is doing a Zoom meeting, and whether they're in my community or in a more rural community that maybe they need a little bit more mental health support, I can connect with somebody, that way. And I can meet with them and share what I'm doing. And then also how, what kind of resources do they have that I can provide to my clients for support.
Right. Yeah. I think for some, they find that intimidating, but it sounds like you've probably worked at it a little bit at a time and kind of built it from there. And it's, and so it takes some patience, but also persistence, I think, to do that. Yeah.
And I think marketing can feel really intimidating sometimes, especially as clinicians, right? We're like, I don't want to be too pushy, but if you look at it more of I'm collaborating with somebody else, because yes, it's helping for you to get your name out there. But how many times are we with a client and they're asking about, oh, do you know of a psychiatrist or do you know of, somebody in the community that works with this type of population? And we may not provide service to them, but we have another referral source to say, here, let me connect you with this other clinician. So it's, again, thinking about it, this is building a relationship so that you can refer and that they can refer to you. And I think, not saying I have to do it all at one time, kind of setting a goal. Maybe it is, one person every, 1 to 2 weeks that you're reaching out to try to have some kind of conversation with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I know another thing that, that I think people would be interested in is your Facebook group and maybe just some of the conversations that you're seeing there and kind of topics that come up.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are you noticing so far?
Yeah. So the group is Moms Building Online Therapy Practices. And I really love my group because it's not just about being a clinician, but also being a mom too.
Mm-hmm.
And the struggles that come with that. And so, right now we're in the time of people are getting ready for school or school has started back. And how do we manage virtual learning? How do we manage kids are at home? And so we've been having recently, there's been a lot of conversation about, how are people balancing this? How are people managing this? And one of the things, that I feel like has been a consistent theme that I've seen as we're having conversations around this is really about adjusting expectations. And that, I think when everything shut down in March, we were like, okay, well, this will be a couple weeks and then it will go back to quote unquote normal. And clearly that's not the case. And so, working on it may not be reasonable to expect that like I can have a caseload of 30 people right now and I can see them all and I'm not going to be disrupted if I'm at home and I have little ones at home too. Mm-hmm. So working on what is a reasonable expectation for your practice currently, and it's not going to probably look like how it was. So how can we make this fit for what you've got going on right now? So that's been a really big piece of conversation that's been happening in the group recently. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of moms too, who are kind of at the beginning start of getting into private practice or getting into online therapy. And, what are the things that they need to do to start? What are the pieces that they need to do to say, okay, I've got these things in order. I'm ready to start seeing clients. And so I do a Facebook Live every week, and we've been kind of going, through different pieces of what are the technology that you need. Next week, we'll be talking about what are some of the marketing strategies, time management of all of that. So it's great because there is a variety of people who have had a practice up and running online for a while and those who are just starting. So it's a real collaborative effort of learning from one another. Right.
Yeah. So with that, what are you, if somebody was maybe thinking of just going into private practice and just doing a strictly online practice, where would you say the best starting place would be?
So I actually have a free guide that people can download that will kind of help walk through some of those steps. If you go to bit.ly/mom ABC guide, they can download the guide there, and it kind of goes through it's called the ABCs of online therapy. And it's what are the essentials, right? Where do we start? And so that guide will help kind of give you a framework to kind of think through some of the things. The things that I usually recommend kind of starting with is getting the basics in order, figuring out, getting an NPI number, getting your tax ID number, figuring out what is the EHR system that you want to use. I know that there's a variety of them out there, but what is going to be, I'm big on efficiency and systems, especially as a mom. We have limited time. So what can we make work for us that we're not going to be having to do all these things in different places, and that is easy for us to use. So getting those kind of essential pieces set up. And then your video system, what are you going to use? Does your EHR offer that? Or are you going to add something on like Google Meet or DoxyMe, something like that? So those are kind of the essential pieces to say, okay, you have basically the nuts and bolts so that if someone picks up the phone to call you, you're ready to start seeing them. And then we grow from there. But that guide is a really good place to kind of start to help you think through what are those first steps that I need to take.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll be sure to have links to all of that in the show notes and show summary for people to access Ashley's things. So, well, Ashley, I want to be respectful of your time, but this has just been a fascinating conversation, and your wisdom is just incredible. And I love the way that you've thought about this and kind of organized it in a way that just makes makes sense for, I think, for a lot of people. So, yeah. So tell folks a little more about how they can get in touch with you and find if they want to, connect with you.
Yep. So you can find me in 2 different places. On Facebook, we would love to have you join our group, and it's Moms Building Online Therapy Practices with Ashley Comegys. Or you can go to my website for the support of continuing to build an online practice, raisedtoempower.com. And I think you'll have that in the show notes too. But yeah, Those are 2 ways that you can easily connect with me.
Oh, that's great. Oh, great. Well, Ashley, I hope we can have another conversation here soon. And I'm so glad that you've been on the podcast. I think this has been just something that's going to be very helpful to people.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad to get to be here today.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Ashley and learned as much as I did, just thinking about just being able to do that whole work-life balance, particularly as parents. I'm at that age now where my daughter is out adulting now, but I do remember all the things we had to juggle when she was little, and particularly when she was at school age. And just, I know when she was finally able to drive, it was kind of like we were finally set free. Didn't have to run her to dance practice and band practice and all the different school things and church things. And so, and so I know even with little kids, just being able to find time to be able to work, but at the same time, do those things that are most important to us, which are our families. So anyway, I'm grateful to Ashley for sharing her wisdom and really giving us other ways to think about how we do our practices and the fact that we could do something totally online, totally virtual, and have a very successful practice as she has done. And so be sure and check out the links to her information and then that free guide that she offered. And we'll have links here in the show notes for all of that, so you can get to those. So, also be sure and check out our sponsors for today's podcast episode. Green Oak Accounting, Julie Harris and her team absolutely know their stuff in helping you navigate the financial side of your practice and all the questions that we can have around feeling financially secure and profitable in our practices. And if you'll go over and contact them at greenoakaccounting.com, let them know you heard about them on the podcast, and arrange a free consultation with them. They can absolutely help you out. And also be sure to check out TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They're the leading electronic health record system for private practice. And they're who I use in my practice, and I couldn't do without them. They are just wonderful to work with, and their platform does it all, including telehealth, as we talked about here in the podcast. Their platform is an all-in-one platform, and their support is second to none. So be sure and check them out, therapynotes.com. And if you'll use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months of their services for free. So be sure to check them out. So thanks again, folks, for listening to the podcast. Oh, and just be sure to go over and check out Killing at Camp, killingatcamp.com. Also, check the links here below for Brighter Vision, so that you can get in the loop on their upcoming Fall into Cash promotion that's coming up. And again, you can get to that by going to brightervision.com/Gordon. And then also be sure to check out the nominees, myself included, for the Up Close and Personal podcast mini-series that my friends Kate and Katie over at the startup, private practice startup, is doing here shortly. And the deadline for that is September the 7th. So yeah, thanks, Kate and Katie. I'm honored that you nominated me. So, be sure to vote for that. So take care, folks. I hope you have a good rest of your week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. And take care out there and stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.